Okay, this is labeled Photographing Butterflies, and it's a crafting lesson for butterfly photographers. For those of you who are not butterfly photographers, it is still a crafting lesson. So let's start. And here's a typical picture of a butterfly, something that somebody might shoot. It's a very nice picture, and that's kind of, need some volume? How do I turn this up? Here. Okay, I don't speak as loud as Emily does.
Everybody be in trouble. He's trying to say his mouth isn't as big as mine.
Next picture. And the problem with this is I'm going to start in Wheaton, Maryland, in Brookside Gardens every year. There is a live butterfly exhibit. And don't worry about that. I'll overlay the thing with the pictures. Just get me. There's a live butterfly exhibit with fantastic butterflies, fantastic flowers, and you go up there and take these fantastic pictures, and we're starting with that. Whoops, and back up. And the question is, just back up one.
It's easier said than done. If I just do backspace, will it work? I don't, oh, here's my little thing showing up. Just a minute. There we go. There it is.
Okay, and the question is, if you have something like this, how do you differentiate yourself from everybody else taking butterfly pictures? And this is something we all think about as crafters. How do we differentiate ourselves in our craft? And this is a story about something I've done. Next. The other way. Yeah. And this is a butterfly at Wings of Fancy. And they have these really beautiful butterflies. And again, next picture. Another example of something there. And what makes a photograph? It's not just pushing the shutter button. We need to think about it a little bit. We need to make the best picture we can. And it requires a little bit of planning. Where do we stand? What lens do we take? Where is the subject? How's it lit? The composition? And there are lots of settings on modern DSLR cameras that, depending upon what you're taking a picture of, these things can be very important and very tricky to use. Next. You need to think about how the picture is going to come out, how your picture is going to be a little different. You have to have a vision. You have to say, I'm not simply going to go up there and take butterflies. You can adjust them a little bit in post-processing, cropping, adjusting the exposure, adjusting the colors, removing distractions. That's not going to get you a different picture, though. That's just going to tweak the one that you have. Back to Wings of Fancy. The competition's here. Everybody there has a camera. That camera may be a DSLR, that camera may be a cell phone, but if you look at it in terms of this is your competition, you get to look at them, as opposed to most people who you're doing your craft here you're doing the same thing in front of everybody else. About half the people have cell phones. A few point and shoots, we'll ignore those because they're a minority in between cell phones, and about half have DSLRs. Cell phones cannot zoom very well. You can't blur the background, which is something you'd like to do. Isolate the butterfly for a better picture. Almost all people use it as a point and shoot device, though there are some people who actually take quite serious pictures with cell phones. The problem from a crafter perspective is the pictures are shared instantly. They go all over to everybody's friend. So if you're trying to sell pictures of butterflies, your competition is just giving them away for free. And their pictures are reshared instantly. So their friends will tell their friends who will tell their friends, and there will be 50 million pictures of this wonderful butterfly that if you try to sell at a craft show, you can't. Next, DSLRs. About half the people have kit lenses. They go out to a store, buy a lens, throw the DSLR in automatic. And they're probably not your major competition, though they can take some beautiful pictures. The other half have telephoto lenses, big lenses, and these are the people that are a little bit more serious. These are your competitions. And everybody has Googled how to take better pictures of butterflies. You get the same information. Just look it up on the web. Next. So what makes a good butterfly picture? A butterfly, composition, where's the butterfly placed in the picture? No distractions. This is where the DSLRs come in. They will blur the background. If your butterfly is not on top of the background directly, you can make the background blurred and the butterfly just stands out. If you have that little depth, that you may have to focus on the right part of the butterfly. That's the other side of that. And pay attention to colors if you can. Try to find the right color butterfly and the right flower. And of course, everybody knows this because this was in Google. This was in the 57,000 articles on how to photograph butterfly in Google. And the other part about this is camera settings. If you leave your camera in fully automatic mode, it's probably going to take a good butterfly picture. At least in this case. There's nothing special that you have to set the camera on as you would have to do for other things. And everyone is taking the same picture. You have all these people that are all chasing the same butterflies around. And everybody's following the guidelines published on the internet, so everybody's pretty much doing exactly the same thing, and you're trying to be different. And in photography, there's a term for this. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right. Vermaelen, it's the frustration of photographing something amazing when thousands of identical photographs already exist. Every craft should have a similar word. I make potholders just like everybody else. I make pots just like everybody else. It should make you frustrating. You need to write down this word, look it up, and look up the equivalent word for your craft. Next. Okay, so creativity. We're told that crafters, we need to exhibit a unique style. And going to an exhibit like this, beautiful pictures, beautiful butterflies, great exposures and everything, just like everybody else. We can play around with the style, we can fiddle around with them a little bit. But there's not much you can do, there's not much you could do or want to do to a butterfly picture. One could get very creative and do butterflies in black and white, and they require a lot of skill, but there are a few things that might work. But the idea of being different is easier said than done. How do I photograph butterflies so that they don't look like every other picture everyone else is taking? Next. So you need to think outside the box. What does that mean? You've heard the term. There are lots of pre-existing conditions. There are pre-existing information. There are lots of articles on the internet. There are people that don't read their camera manuals. Mine happens to be 548 pages and a supplemental 51 pages on how to use autofocus. It helps if you read that sometimes. So using alternative styles, perhaps. Macros, extreme close-ups. It could work for butterfly pictures. They could be a little different. Black and white, duotones, I'm not sure. Selective color is probably real cheesy. Stylized with software filters, yeah, they're different, but they look like crap. So back to Wings of Fancy. And I noticed at Wings of Fancy a large blue butterfly, and it has these iridescent blue wings. Really, really beautiful. The color really absolutely stands out more than any other butterfly there. And the problem is when the butterfly folds its wings, the iridescence is on the inside. Go back to the...
Sorry about this. It won't show up. See what I'm trying to do.
Okay, so I have a moment of inspiration that says, you know, if I want to photograph this beautiful butterfly with iridescent wings, I'll have to take a picture of it in flight. Okay, this is not covered very much by the How to Photograph Butterflies. This requires a little bit more skill, a little bit more of a challenge, maybe a lot more of a challenge. But I think to myself, this would be really cool. This would be unique. This is what every crafter thinks of. How do I make something that when somebody looks at it and says, oh, he did that? You know, there were 20,000 people going through Wings of Fancy this year, or probably more than that. And these, you know, there's only a handful that will do stuff like this. And the reality of it is at that point, I had no idea how to take pictures of butterflies in flight. They're not included in the 10 steps to better butterfly pictures. Butterfly flight is very erratic. I've taken pictures of birds, and birds go, they're pretty easy to get. Butterflies go, and at the time I was using a 6D. The autofocus on that is, I mean, it takes beautiful pictures, but it doesn't do any tricky autofocus. So here's my picture of the large iridescent blue butterfly that I wanted to take a picture of. And I made an observation then that sometimes pairs of butterflies circle each other for several seconds. And I thought, you know, if I manually focus and shoot in burst mode, maybe somewhere as they're circling around, maybe one or two of them will be in focus. And this is from Wings of Fancy. My first test of getting a butterfly in flight. Here's another one. A few of these work pretty good. Next. And these are different. These are not the butterfly pictures that you typically see. These are unique. Next. Okay, this worked in a closed environment. And that was fun, but there are all sorts of other butterflies out in the wild. And I need to try this outdoors. And I bought a Canon 7D II. This is the ideal camera for doing this, if anything will do it. This has a world-class autofocus system, and it takes a lot of pictures in burst mode, so you could take a lot of pictures and kind of hope that one's in focus. And I still have problems. They are so erratic that I can't get the butterfly in the viewfinder. And world-class autofocus at this point is worthless because I can't even aim the camera at it. So no more pictures. Late summer, I thought about this pretty much all year. And there's a local pollinator garden that now has a 7-foot thistle which has attracted every imaginable thing that flies, including butterflies. I mean, there's goldfinches on here all over the place, and there's hummingbird moths. I mean, bees, everything you can think of. And every once in a while, a butterfly will hover above the thistle. Aha, here's an opportunity. I've isolated the butterfly. I found a location where the butterfly is going to allow me to take a picture of it. And here's one example. Another example. Another. That's a little dark. It'd probably show up better if we had the lights out.
It's not too much better on the screen.
One more. And another. This is my favorite. I really like this one. And then the question becomes, as long as you're pushing your limits, how far can you push them? And here is my challenge for next year. Back up. Back up. You need the last slide. So what I'm saying, to sum it up, to reiterate everything, is as crafters, we're looking at doing things differently. We simply can't do what everybody else does. We need to look and we need to try things, even if they're difficult, even if you don't know how to do them. Be persistent, and every once in a while you'll figure something out that'll really make your work stand out.
Well, the next slide.
Next one. Yeah, but I'm showing too much stuff. Let me get rid of that.
This we can guess it's a butterfly.
Do from current slide, up there.
There. But now we should probably take the lights off, right? Because then.
Why don't you turn the lights out for a second just to show this, and I'll let you look at it for a minute and try to figure out what it is.
I get it, okay.
You move to the side, we can't see it.
It's not a very good picture, but I just proved that I could do it. And if you turn the lights back, actually that is a gnat. That is one of these little flying insects. And I shot that at a 4,000th of a second, and the wings are still blurred. This thing is moving very fast. The camera that I didn't have the 7D Mark II, I had the 6D, and at a 4,000th of a second, the wings are blurred, the legs are a bit sharp, and whatever is in front is blurred. Whatever's there, I couldn't freeze it at that speed. So that's my challenge for next year. And I hope that everybody decides to challenge themselves and to do better in their craft, try to find something different. Do we have any questions?
Is that handheld?
Yes, and I probably took 70 pictures, and that's the best one.
Because, do you have a remote control?
I do.
I would focus it on a bunch of, on a swarm of gnats and on a tripod and hit the remote.
I wasn't, the problem with the gnats is I thought about that for a long time. This is one of these things that sits in the back of my head. And I would go back to the park and not see these swarms that I normally would see this past year. And late in the season, I went to the park, I had the other camera, and all of a sudden there's a couple swarms of gnats. I figured, well, I'll give it a shot, I'll see what happens. And if I ever get a good shot, it's going to be enlarged. But I like some of the shots that I did get of the butterflies. I made a magazine out of it. Any other questions?
When is the best time to go to the Woodside Gardens? Is it during the week?
Yeah, the parking is a bit of a hassle there. You're going to have to, it's called Wings of Fancy. If you Google that, they'll tell you when they're open, because they're not open at winter. They're maybe April or so.
The blue ones, are those that they have in the Amazon in Brazil?
They have all sorts of exotic butterflies, things that you won't find at the park.
But she's talking about the monarch, blue monarch.
That wasn't a blue monarch. Linda,
Alan, would you explain burst mode? Because I don't think a lot of people understand.
will I explain what?
Burst mode.
Burst mode is when your camera can take multiple pictures, and depending upon the camera that you have, some cameras will take multiple pictures and are not able to refocus as you're taking a picture. The better of the DSLRs can refocus as you're taking your picture, so every picture is refocused and every picture is re-exposed. Depending upon how you have your camera set, in my camera I shoot RAW. I can get 31 pictures of raw pictures, which is the best quality pictures that I can adjust the most. And after 31 pictures, then the camera slows down. If I choose to shoot in JPEG, the camera will shoot until the car is full up. And 31 is a large buffer. A lot of cameras only have 8 or 10 pictures, and then they slow down. And people that have the mirrorless type camera, they are not very good at tracking yet. They're getting there, but a lot of the mirrorless do not track very well. Yes?
Previously, at the very beginning, you were talking about two-tone?
Duotones.
What is that, please?
a duotone is kind of a black and white picture where the black part could be blue and the lighter part's orange. There's only two colors. And it's a stylistic thing. It's not as common as it used to be.
Alan, you had another phrase in here that talked about the rule of third. What is that rule?
The rule of thirds, and I completely ignored it here, is it's some people on the back of your cameras. Actually, there are guidelines that you can put in, 2 lines going up, 2 lines going down. There are people that feel that if you have your subject on one of those intersections of the lines, that it makes the picture more interesting. Pictures that are dead center are not as interesting as pictures where you're off center. And I'm just trying to prove that you can do it here. There are other variations of the rule of thirds. The English have like a 60-40 split. There's a different split there. There are people that go by something called the perfect ratio, the golden ratio, golden spiral. Basically what it is saying, don't take the picture all the time with the subject in the center. Move it. I think that's the best explanation. But the rule of thirds says move it specifically here. I think a better rule is, be careful about placing everything in the center all the time. Anything else?
Wonderful.